Hello and welcome back to Lakeland, Finland Sustainable Destination Congress. Hope you had a good break. It's good to have you with us again. We are making this program from the city of Lahti, European Green Capital 2021. Outside is minus 11 degrees. It's really beautiful and wintry. Last year it wasn't like this, so we are lucky to have a proper winter these days. Okay, let's go and carry on. Next we have an all-Finnish panel. 3 experts here to have a really interesting conversation about the level of traveling and how we're going to travel in the future, what kind of means of transport we're using, how people's consumers' attitudes and consumer behavior is changing. First of all, Marika Nekki, communication specialist from Tallink, Silja, welcome. We live on unprecedented times. Corona has affected, let's say, all sectors in life. In terms of your level of work, how has it affected your running business operations on a day-to-day basis?
Well, thank you for inviting me here. And I work in communications here in Tallink, Silja, Finland. And of course, it has been, last year was really different year. It was very special. We had to make crisis communications almost during the whole year. So we need to be really flexible, adaptable, agile and quick. And we needed to inform also our passengers, our own employees, the big audience, everybody. And as you know, the rules and restrictions for the traveling were changing all the time. So I would say it was a really exceptional year.
I must ask, did you get a lot of complaining feedback from people when rules were changing, and there was a level of uncertainty as well? People weren't quite sure all the time what was going on and what are you allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do.
That was a really big challenge, of course, but I would say that we got mostly positive feedback for informing passengers. Everybody was really understandable in different cases.
And even though you're expert in crisis management and crisis communication, I'm sure your skill set had to be rethought again when the corona crisis struck.
Yes, of course. We haven't never seen this kind of situation in our business, so we had to learn, of course, also ourselves.
Thank you, Marika. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Next we have Larilahti, Vice President of Sustainability at Finnair. Welcome.
Thank you.
As I just mentioned earlier, the world's changing. As we all know, the world's changing. Not just Corona, we have the climate crisis. We're talking about the 6th extinction. People's attitudes are changing. And also, when we talk about flying, that's quite a lot on the agenda, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, should you fly or not. How do you personally view this kind of changing landscape and all this debate that is circulating around flying?
I think it's a really good debate. It's good that we're discussing it. I'm especially happy that even during the pandemic, the climate discussion prevails, because typically people can deal with one crisis at a time. It can be the financial crisis, and it was migration, climate change, and then we had the pandemic. But for one reason or another, climate change has still stayed on the agenda, and that's a really, really good thing. And aviation is a little bit of a poster child for climate change. Which is interesting, given that aviation is about 2 to 3% of the global CO2 emissions. So it's not a huge contributor, but it is a big contributor. So we absolutely need to work more on it. The important thing is to realize that what is bad and what is not. So flying is not bad, but the emissions are bad. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the right things. So there's nothing wrong with travel, but there's plenty of wrong with emitting too much CO2. So let's focus on this while preserving the fantastic world of travel.
Absolutely, and we'll elaborate on these themes later on with all of you guys. And last but not least, we have Dobby Simola, Senior Vice President of Passenger Services at Via Group, the national rail in Finland. Warmly welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Great to have you. You've been talking about how you want to create sustainable alternatives to road travel. We still know, like when we talk about, for example, work commuting, car is still essential. A lot of people are traveling by car. How do you see the potential for people kind of changing their mindset and starting to travel on rail instead of in their cars?
Well, the potential is huge. Obviously, our market share is 6% before the COVID crisis in Finland for rail. and so there is a lot to gain. Obviously, before the COVID crisis, we actually had almost a linear growth of more than 10% annually in Finland, and I think now the key question is that how we come back after the COVID crisis to that situation.
And we'll discuss that further. And thank you all for your comments and questions in the first session of the morning. Keep them coming. You can reach us via screen@io on the wall or tweet us by using the hashtag SDC21. We are picking up your questions and forwarding them to your panelists today, so keep them coming. Right, dear panelists, let's start with a really topical question that I'm sure a lot of us are thinking at the moment. Will there be another tourism boom after coronavirus ended, when the new normal, whatever it means, begins? Marika, would you like to start?
Well, we at Tallink, Silja, we think, of course, that this local tourism and also traveling to neighbor countries will be the first one which will happen. People, maybe they don't want to book a trip to a long distance, which costs a lot of money, but they might to think that, okay, I will see the situation tomorrow and then I will book a trip to Tallinn or to Stockholm or to Riga. So we definitely think that there will be a new travel boom as soon as we are allowed to travel again.
What about Anne?
I would agree. There are so many reasons for people to travel. There's so much pent-up demand right now. People want to see their loved ones, they want to meet new people, they want to experience new experiences. So absolutely, once we start feeling safe, once it's allowed and we feel safe, then there will be a boom. If it's going to be the same size as before, we'll see. That remains to be seen, but we need to make sure, again, to make travel good and just look at the risks and eliminate them.
Yeah, Peter Elfs was earlier mentioning how he traveled here from Sweden. He was actually faced with an empty airport and he was feeling quite apocalyptic about it. But obviously, we're still way ahead of the new normal. Does that make you feel nervous when you see these pictures of empty airports? That is this going to be part of the new normal?
Yeah, I do understand how he feels. It does feel like you're in a science fiction movie when you're at the empty airport with like this looping announcement on the virus. It feels really scary. But that's not the new normal. This is still the crisis situation. The new normal is going to be something else, and that's not going to be empty airports.
And judging by different questionnaires that have been conducted, people are, as you said, they are eager to fly, eager to meet their loved ones, go to different cultures, meet different people from different cultures. So
yes.
I'm sure there are millions of people waiting for that new normal to begin.
For sure.
Topi, what are you thinking? Will there be another tourism boom once the new normal begins?
Definitely. Actually, if you look at the sales data at the moment in Finland, the routes where we are merely seeing the leisure travel are not affected as much as the commuter traffic basically. So, for example, our night trains to Lapland are selling quite okay even during the pandemic, because obviously that's a very safe product to travel to Lapland, and that's a sign that there is the demand when we are allowed to travel again.
I have to say, personally, I was on a work trip in Lapland last week and I had to use my car as well, so I just put it in a carriage and jump in a cabin. So it did feel safe. I didn't feel that, oh, is there going to be a coronavirus behind the door?
Exactly.
Striking me. So it was a pleasant way of commuting to work to Lapland.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, like we've been reading the news probably in different parts of Scandinavia, that more and more domestic travelers have been kind of embracing Lapland and its winter wonderland. Have you got a lot of feedback from Finnish or foreign nationals living in Finland that they've kind of found Lapland and discovered it in a new way?
Yeah, definitely. We are getting feedback from customers which are traveling to Lapland for the first time in their life, actually, and feeling that sleeping in a train extremely nice way to spend a night, and also a sustainable one, definitely with our zero emissions. We are clearly seeing new types of customers now traveling in Finland. Normally maybe going to Alps or abroad or somewhere, and now enjoying the Finnish environment.
Peter Elfs in his presentation talked about the effects of coronavirus, especially to individuals or tourist operators and providers in different parts of Scandinavia. But it'd be interesting to know how coronavirus has struck your company and your day-to-day operations. Marika, you mentioned a few things about the crisis management, but in terms of like the actual traffic and transport, how has that influenced Tallink Silja's operations?
Well, last year in March, when this all started, half of our fleet, our vessels, were suspended on ports. So there were actually only the remaining was cargo traffic and then this essential work trip. So it's quite funny that you don't have this in railways. You don't have any or so much commuter traffic, but on our vessels we have. This is the only one which is left if you work in Finland or in Tallinn or Sweden, so you can travel if it's work related. But last year we had 62% less passengers than the year before, and then in cargo we had about -5%. So it has affected a lot in our business.
And hence your employees as well and their families' lives.
Yes, of course. We have had to make redundant many of our employees, and almost the rest of them are on layoff at the moment, so not so many of us are working.
And what about Anne? Aviation travel obviously has been in the press quite a lot about how the number of flights have been cancelled, and like you said, airports been empty. So how has the life and reality been shown to your eyes over the last 11 months that it's been going on?
Yeah, nothing short of dramatic. It has been the worst crisis that aviation has faced ever. It is bigger than 9/11, the ash cloud, financial crisis, all that put together. So our traffic crashed about 90%, which means that we're in a very similar situation. We have had to lay off quite a lot of people. People are on temporary layoffs. Big impact has also been the fact that the rules, like you said, the rules keep changing, because obviously we need to react according to the new data and new science coming in. So so we're having to be very, very flexible to we've been cancelling flights, returning people's money and so on, and that will have a lasting impact on the company as well. So in the future we're going to be even more flexible than we have been before this. So that's one learning. We're giving more choice to our customers in terms of cancellations, rebookings, timings, and so on. So there are quite a lot of changes and part of those will stay. And then, of course, the health implications. We have our cabin crew are wearing masks. We started that very, very early on, and now also requiring the customers to wear a mask while on the flight. The aircraft have very, very efficient filtering systems in them. So there are actually very few cases globally where people have been contracting the virus during the flight. But that's one thing, is what are the facts, and then there's another thing, that how does it feel like. So even though it is very safe to be on the aircraft, we still want to put a lot of emphasis on making people feel safe as well. Hence the mask, the disinfectants and all that.
And you haven't, like on your, say, domestic flights, etc., you haven't had any kind of big cases where there's been a corona contracted from one person to another?
No, not at Finnair and not globally in any aircraft, and that is mostly due to the air filtering systems. They're very, very efficient.
I gotta ask, like, these changes are so sudden and drastic. So what's the moral among your staff? How they are kind of coping with this day-to-day challenges that we keep facing?
Yeah, I mean that is a serious issue for sure. but I would have to say that I'm very impressed. People, the morals are still as high as they can be in a situation like this, and there's like this new innovativeness coming out. All of a sudden, we're in businesses we've never been before. We're selling business class meals in supermarkets. We're selling the iconic blueberry juice in the supermarket. So we're trying to bring the flight experience to ground when we can't take people up in the air. So all this innovation happening. Aurinkomatkat is making trips to Lapland now when they can't go south. Our cargo people have been amazing. We're really carrying a lot of cargo right now, and we had virtual flights during Christmas with Santa Claus. Not like huge businesses compared to what we had, but it's new, it's innovative, it's very fast-paced. It's a new type of Finnair that we'll take with us going forward.
Great, and we'll come back to that innovation and what's waiting for us in the future and what innovation we need. Topi, obviously you mentioned earlier that national rail's been pretty okay, but obviously you haven't had any or not that much foreign nationals traveling and experience in Finland on rail.
Well, we are not okay. This has been really, really tough for railways as well. We are making loss around 300,000 euros per each day at the moment. So although we have some, let's say, good lanes, good routes like the Lapland, the majority of our business is shocked, of course, due to the COVID crisis. And at VR we need to balance keeping the society working so that we drive enough trains for the society to be able to work and go, policemen go to work and so forth, and to be able to kind of limit our losses at the same time. So this has been a big crisis for us as well.
Well, that's an interesting point about the balance between social responsibility and keeping the society working and kind of maintaining your role in it, but at the same time the losses economically are huge. What kind of thoughts does that bring in your mind, Marika, when you look at your important role in the society?
Yes, as you have maybe mentioned here before, that Finland is an island, so we know that we need our cargo traffic with our vessels to export and import things to Finland. Actually 90% of import and export, it's via sea. So, and our business concept is based on three elements. We have this cargo traffic, and then passengers, and then this conference people, B2B customers. So now we are lacking those three elements. We have only cargo is left, but the ship itself, it still, of course, costs money to operate it. And if you don't have any passengers, there is no incomes. Only the income is from the cargo, and we have also had unprofitable departures, many of them, even the cargo is like fully booked. So we are balancing also with this same aspect. Should we like stop those departures which are unprofitable, or is it like doing social responsibility just to get cargo move from countries to each other? So
it really goes to show how much our economy is relying on people going from one place to another, within countries and across the countries. Anne, what do you think about this balance between social responsibility and trying to face the economic realities, which are really harsh for all of you three at the moment?
Yeah, I was listening to the previous presenter, and you asked them about sort of defining sustainability in travel and so on, and that's sort of classically you define sustainability in general as being, it's environmental, social, economic sustainability, and the trick is to keep that balance, because now we're like in the middle of an experiment in aviation. That what if you only look at one? I mean, we're doing fantastically on environmental sustainability at the moment because we're not flying, so we cut our emissions by 90%. But the cost, the economic and social cost, is completely unacceptable. When it's not a controlled reduction in the emissions, then you notice that you lose that balance. So yes, great on environment, but then laying off people. Also, if we look at the destinations that we travel to, they are typically, look at many of the southern countries, islands and so on. Tourism is so important, and it is also the industry that typically employs a lot of women, a lot of not so highly educated people. That's gone. So the balance is not there, and then it's not sustainable anymore, no matter how much you saved on carbon dioxide. But that is the trick, is to keep all those three in balance. And economic sustainability, like Marika said, that if you don't make a profit as a company, you're useless in the two others.
And also, if people don't have jobs, it's quite. They're not that interested in working towards environmental sustainability as well. Well, actually, you paved the way for a conversation about sustainability. Like you mentioned, Peter brought up really good points about sustainability, those three key core elements of it. Topi, when you talk about sustainability amongst your staff or to customers, what are the kind of the key areas that you emphasize?
Well, that's a core in our strategy in VR, the sustainability, and in those three different buckets. Obviously, if we start with the emissions, we have zero emissions. So our goal is to have more and more people using trains in Finland, so that the footprint of the whole society comes better. So that's why we are here. For the society, obviously, as I already discussed a little bit earlier, or touch based on earlier, we need to keep the drive enough trains so that the society can work. And obviously, we are the only one here so far driving trains. So it's a balancing act between the economic responsibility and the social responsibility. Then the economic responsibility is very important for VR, because we are a state-owned company. So we are paying dividends every year now, 100 million euros this year for the government. And we all know that there are a lot of very good places where you can use that money after the COVID crisis. So we need to be very, very efficient also in the future.
Yeah, Anne mentioned earlier in your first speech that aviation, flying is kind of poster child for climate change, and it's in the newspapers. You see a picture of a plane very often when we talk about the climate change. And I think, like Peter said, that one good thing that has come out of COVID, amongst many bad things, it's like we are starting to raise awareness about how complex this world is, how complex these issues are, and hence the solutions to these problems. For example, like you were saying, aviation is responsible for around 3% of the global emission. But then again, on the other hand, like textile business is about 10%, and that doesn't really get talked about that much. So what, in terms of from a point of view of like communication to people and operating in the kind of media heavy society, how do you tackle this issue that people would see the bigger picture in terms of how global emissions are divided among sectors?
Yeah, I don't know if we tackle it that much. I mean, yes, there are industries that emit more than we do, but we need to focus on what we can do and what we can do better. And also to have that a little bit of a macro view on it. I mean, I agree with Topi. More people should take the train. Sometimes you should take the train when there is a plane connection as well, because it just makes more sense from the environmental perspective. So these two are not competing per se, but they are sort of complementary ways of travel. In the same way, travel between Asia and Europe should always go through Finland, because that's the shortest route. That is the most sort of emissions-friendly route. So
hang on, just interrupt you there. What's the alternative if it's not coming via Finland to Southeast Asia?
Well, a lot of cargo, for example, goes through the so-called southern route. So they go through Doha.
Yeah.
And the difference is huge, actually. So if you go through Helsinki, you might emit 25% less.
Right.
Than the southern route. So so in the same way that we need to have more trains in the domestic travel, we need to have more Helsinki hub flying in the international travel between Asia and Europe. So we more talk about that rather than, telling textile industry what they should do. We don't really know that. But
and as we know, that's normally not the right way to go forward.
No.
It's just going to end up being in a battle.
No, I mean, and 3% is not a lot, but then in absolute terms it is. So we absolutely need to bring that down.
But in terms of obviously we need solutions on a global sphere, and you were saying that that could be 25% less if you transport cargo via Helsinki route. Have you communicated this on an international level, and what's the reaction has been to this statistic?
I think it's something that people are waking up to more and more, both cargo, but then also people traveling. People are getting more aware of the impact. They're more aware of, I think the whole pandemic has just brought us closer to our values. So people are more thoughtful about how do they travel, where do they travel, and what is the reason. And it's more maybe about new experiences and more sort of value-based travel than before. And environmental concerns are part of that. So we absolutely feel that both our geographic location as well as then the other things that we do to be a very sustainable airline will be a competitive advantage for us, because people will be looking for that in the future more and more.
And then during Corona, a lot of people have been ordering stuff online, which means cargo, passing parcels from the other side of the world to the other. So these are still there, that we need solutions and more sustainable ways of transporting stuff and people. Marika, what about you? What are you thinking about what Anna just said in terms of cargo and people?
Well, I definitely also agree that we should do in shipping business or maritime business, we should definitely do more together, and always we can be better in CO2 emissions. We need to work very hardly to lower the emissions, but we can't do it alone. We need to do it with the other fuel companies and science and everything. We need everybody to work, and also of course all traffic companies. But passengers, they are of course more interested in, they are asking nowadays a lot more about their emissions, about everything. Somebody even has total emission, I don't know how do you say, they can spend in a year, and then they start to calculate, can I travel with the train, or can I make this trip to Tallinn, or is it too much for my emission account? So it's good that passengers and people are more aware and more interested in sustainable aspects as well.
World's changing fast, and actually at this stage we'll take few audience member questions. There are some challenging questions to you, dear panelists. We'll start with Finnair. After Corona ends, what is Finnair going to do to ensure not to encourage people fly for fun? In the new normal, more people will want to travel, and this will of course increase emissions. What do you say to this, Anne?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to define fun. I would love to travel to London for fun, to see my daughter that I haven't seen in a year. So I would consider that as fun and also essential travel. But again, I would go back to the fact that I don't think there's anything wrong with travel. We don't want to encourage people to travel less. We just want to make sure that there's less emissions on it. And to ensure that, we have a plan in place, which is likely the most ambitious emissions plan in aviation at the moment. We're going to be carbon neutral in 2045, and we're going to reduce our emissions to half from 2019 to half already by end of 2025. So we have a very, very ambitious plan in place, and to make sure that happens, it's also in our incentives. So for all the employees, from the CEO to myself and to all my colleagues, our sort of incentives are tied into our environmental performance, partly. I mean, there are other parts to it as well, but we want to make sure that once the traffic grows, the emissions don't grow as fast. They will grow, but they need to grow slower than traffic. So we're really focusing on that. Disencouraging people to fly for fun is a little difficult, but I don't think that has ever been sort of Finnair business model. We're not the cheapest out there. We're not really maybe the airline that takes you to, for a weekend for cheap beer, or I don't know. I'm not sure what the business model there is, but we do see that there are so many good reasons to travel, and we need to make sure that you can do it in a sustainable way.
And when you look at the society, and as we've been talking about the changing value system, if you like, it's on one hand is the customers. They are the right. They want more sustainable and environmentally friendly ways of transporting themselves from one place to another, whether it's work or leisure. But then on the other hand, is that kind of like big company responsibility, wanting to be innovative, as you just kind of described there, that how Finnair is trying to be carbon neutral by 2045. So is that it creates kind of an interesting kind of realm, if you like, where on the other hand there's the customer wanting one thing, and then the companies that are leading the race probably have to be very innovative to kind of respond to the customers and society's changing value system. To get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And the coolest thing ever is that now it's a competitive factor.
Yeah.
And companies love competition, and that's when we thrive. When you say that, I'm going to reduce emissions this much, you're sure that somebody's going to go like, yeah, but we can do better. And that is really, and the planet doesn't care what our motivation is. If we do it for competition or for money or for love of the society, it makes no difference as long as it happens.
Yeah, that the race seems to be between countries as well, within EU, and if you look at what's happening in China, which is great, they have positive news as well. Topi, the next question will come to you. Last time with VA National Rail, I traveled to Kolari. All the cars were loaded with help of diesel power, so it is not zero CO2 emission. That was the comment. What's your response to that?
Yeah, that's correct. 98% of the tracks in or the tracks in Finland are electrified, where we have passenger traffic. So 2% are using diesel. So currently we are compensating that, and hopefully in the future we are able to find hydrogen or battery-based locos, basically, which will then replace those old diesels. But currently we need to compensate.
But it's correct to say that the emissions are very, very low.
Very low.
But this goes to show, like reading these comments, please keep them coming. They're very good. But it goes to show that people care about these issues. They've studied them. They're really important to our day-to-day life, whether we talk about work or how we live our life with our free time. In terms of Anne just said about their kind of innovative way into the future, what they're looking at the future and how they're competing with other companies. What about Tallink, Silja? What's your kind of take on this kind of like a company competition in the world of environmental friendly development?
Well, we have this. We are going to have the greenest way to travel from Helsinki to Tallinn next year, when our new ship built here in Finland or in Rauma will be ready. So we have then 2 environmental friendly ships, Megastar and MyStar, on the route. So that's like a great thing here. But of course we need to also think that the ships are built, they are trafficking like 50 to 60 years. So we have like built new ships in 2010 or a little bit before. So actually they are very new ships, and still the ships don't fulfill the environmental, targets which are like today. So that's we need to balance with the fact that you need to operate the ship like 50 years, and you try to make more like technology-based solutions for those ships which are actually quite new. So we are balancing the fact that we have those beautiful, like Silja Serenade and Silja Symphony, which we want to operate, and also the passengers want to travel with those ships. We try to make and build a new technology for those ships and then make less emissions. But yeah, what was the question actually? I lost
when it comes to like that kind of creative destruction amongst companies that they are trying to create more environmentally friendly, more sustainable ways of traveling so that they can meet the demands of the customers.
Yes, and of course we have been thinking environmental like decades, because we know that in maritime business you need to be there and you need to fulfill all those demands and restrictions and rules. So we have been there. Actually, there are some EU-based legislation which is coming into effect this or next year, and we have been working like that even tens of years, like grey waters. Some shipping, bigger cruise ships might even discharge their grey waters in the Baltic Sea, which we haven't done like in 20 years. So we want to be there and fulfill all the demands.
If I recap a bit what Peter was saying in his presentation, and he was describing based on surveys and studies that people will be flying, they will be traveling a lot in the future, and probably when the new normal becomes and starts, traveling will be one of the defining factors in it when people want to actually experience the world. So this is ever so more crucial that we discuss these ways that big companies like such as yours will be developing and responding to the kind of the acute crisis that we have with environment and also biodiversity as well. I want to ask this on a personal level. Has this corona kind of affected, also when we talk about climate change, have they affected in terms of how you view the world and your role in it as a citizens and consumers? Can I start with Topi, please?
To be honest, not really. I think the COVID crisis itself hasn't affected my kind of view of where I am and my values, I think. But overall, I've been more and more thinking of how to live a sustainable life in a way that it's still easy to kind of follow that route. So that is something, especially when talking to my kids. I think that the pressure comes from them.
That you felt that pressure from the younger generation.
Totally. Yeah. They question my kind of consumer behavior a lot. So I think that's a very key in our changes, that you need to find the personal motivation to change.
Yeah, it starts with all of us.
Yeah.
What about Anne?
Yeah, I would have to agree that not such a huge change during the pandemic. I'm a long time tree hugger already, so that hasn't really changed. But I think it has brought me even closer to my values, to really think that what is important, what is it that I miss, and what am I ready to sort of sacrifice for. We had a really good discussion, actually a couple of discussions before we started here, on the importance of meeting people, on the importance of touching and hugging and sort of having these face-to-face conversations. And I had never even thought about how important that is until now. And that is now such a value for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned about, I have to, as a side note, my friends and family are in London and Manchester, and it is absolutely affecting your level of life. And suddenly you can't see your loved ones for over a year. Marika, what's your thoughts?
I think I have quite similar thoughts with you. I also think that for my mental health personally, I need to have, in my calendar, that I know that it's coming, my trip somewhere, even if it's like Lahti, to spend weekend here, or to fly to Berlin, or to travel with our vessels to Tallinn. But I need that information, that I can book my trip now, and then I can travel. So that's more and more important, to make those small bookings in advance.
Yeah, just a small anecdote from Lapland when I was there last week, and I talked to several people, like I always do. can't help, I'm a journalist. So I was speaking to a lot of people about like what their view is on Corona, how it's affected their work life, and obviously traveling, being there in the center of everything. But they were saying that within kind of like last 2 months, all of these companies and people that I spoke to over that week saying that they've been getting a lot of foreign travels, like from especially Europe, even Southeast Asia. So people are kind of starting to mentally prepare that I've got, like you said, Marika, that there is that holiday next year or next autumn, and it just goes to show that wherever you are, Holland, Finland, Germany, people are kind of desperate to have that kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and they can move and hug and see people in different cultures. So what you just said is kind of reflected in my Lapland case as well, if I may say that. But let's go back to audience questions. We are getting a lot of comments, which is really good. Anna, you mentioned earlier about this kind of synergy between railroad traveling and aviation, and that's been there kind of like saying the only way of cutting emission is flying less. As a representative of Finnair, like, what's your thought on if someone's saying, well, the best way of kind of reducing carbon emission in flying is flying less? What do you say to that?
Not the best way, but the fastest way. Yeah, we've seen that the past year. But like I said, the social and economic price of that is not acceptable. But the way that we're looking at 2045, for example, it's not so much. It's about 5% of that accomplishment will come from flying less. The biggest thing is going to be the new fuels that are coming up. We have a company in this country that is absolutely global leader in biofuels, Neste. So biofuels are going to make a difference. Also, then going forward, the so-called e-fuels. So where you actually make fuel out of carbon dioxide and hydrogen by using green energy, and you make a liquid that you can then use as fuel. Hydrogen in itself, there are going to be hydrogen planes by sort of 2030. The first ones are going to be flying. So that's going to be the biggest thing. And then it is about efficiency. We're completely obsessed with weight of the planes. We're measuring everything, if it's a teaspoon or the carpet or the paint that the plane is painted on. So you get a lot of efficiencies from there. And just to give you an idea, and what you can do as a traveler as well, we calculated in 2018, we calculated that if every passenger would have packed 1 kilo less, that would save enough fuel to fly 20 times from Helsinki to Tokyo. So also the passenger choices make a difference. And we're hoping to do this together with the passengers. I mean, passengers can do small things that make an impact because there's a big volume, and then we'll do the big things and we'll put the big money in. Passengers hopefully do compensation and sort of mindful travel, and then we'll do the investments.
I think it's also a question of roles of different transportation. I think you should think the world not in a black and white type of a scenario. It's totally okay to fly from Asia to here with Finnair, but then connect to the rest of the Finland with rail, for example.
Exactly.
And I think that's the point. And also you can commute using car to the station and then continue with railways. So I think the change will be more effective if we are not looking at a black and white type of a scenario, more just going to the more sustainable direction.
Absolutely. We just need to make it easy for the customer to do it.
Totally.
So that's sort of our job, to make
Exactly.
it seamless.
Yeah.
Yes, referring one more time to Peter's presentation, he was talking about collaboration between companies on land or everywhere, but this is a new angle here with regards to Peter's points of collaboration, that actually you are providing this kind of network of travel for whether you come from China or Southeast Asia or Europe. What is your level of collaboration outside this conversation? How much do you talk to one another?
We actually, at least we have cooperation with all of the different players in Finland, and we even, for example, in Turku, we schedule our trains so that they go to the ferry terminal basically. So that's the closest as you can get. And of course now the digital capabilities can help us to make customers' life easier to kind of use different ways of or modes of transportation. And we have ongoing discussions with Finnair and Aurinkomatkat, for example, at the moment. So it's business as usual. But we need to be better, that's clear.
Yeah, it might be like, I'm just projecting here, like obviously what happened last year, domestic traveling to Lapland has increased,
Yeah.
but also maybe within Nordic countries as well, it's safe to come on land or flight times are shorter and then you can use rail. So have you viewed into the Nordic countries and this kind of Nordic network that might change after the new normal begins?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Nordics are definitely sort of in the forefront of this whole climate change discussion, and yes, I mean, there's a lot of discussion on, especially aviation and railroad, and Sweden, I think, is a little bit ahead of us in that discussion already, and yeah. But it's like I said, it's up to us to create those solutions for people. It should be still easy so that you can buy one ticket, and somebody takes care of you the whole trip, regardless if you're in a car or a train or a plane.
Great. And as this whole point of this panel is to talk about the island that Finland is and how we can get how people travel here and from here. So we've been getting really good points from you, and we'll go back to the audience questions which are flying in. Even though the emissions of aviation are totally 3 to 4%, when we think that form of point of individual, meaning per individual, emissions caused by flying can be the main cause of the emissions. Why Finnair does not actively give us possibility to compensate or campaign those easy solutions for individuals to decrease emissions?
I have a very simple answer to that, because it's illegal. We used to do that. We had a service called Push for Change, but then at some point there was an interpretation of the law that private companies cannot offer compensations, because it's seen as collecting money, and so that you're not getting anything back for it, and then a private company can't do something like that. This is likely to change early this year, we're hoping, because it doesn't make sense. It's just, sometimes these things just happen. Nobody thinks it makes sense, but it has somehow just become a law, but we're hoping that already in the first quarter this year this will change, and then we'll bring our service back immediately, and then our customers will be enabled to either compensate for their travel on an offsetting scheme, or they can buy biofuel for their trip.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see which aviation company will be the first to compensate for the client, basically everything. As said, we made a decision to compensate the 2% of our passenger traffic, which is happening with diesel, and that's of course easy for us. And it's a bigger challenge for aviation, but I think I'm waiting for the first company to kind of really go to that niche globally and compensate everything. So
there is a company that does that. I think they started a little bit more than a year ago.
Okay.
And we also had a discussion when we were making our strategy that should we do that, but we sort of came into a conclusion that it's, like you said, it's easy.
Yeah.
So we thought that it's going to be too easy for us, and so we're using compensation as part of our strategy, but it's a bridge to the new technologies. So we need to use it in a short term, but our focus is really on the new fuels, on the energy efficiency. So we're trying to reduce our own impact primarily, and then what we can't do there, then we will compensate. So both our customers, but ourselves as well. We will do offsetting ourselves.
Marika, what thoughts have been coming to your mind when we talk about this compensating one's emissions on a travel?
Well, we don't have this kind of system, not yet at the moment in shipping business. So we are of course following it, very interested in following it, but at the moment it's really difficult to calculate your emissions when you're traveling with our vessels, because of course it depends so much how much they are carrying cargo, how many passengers there are, and you can't know it in advance. And of course last year was an exceptional year. Then it's of course if there are 50 passengers in a big ship, you can imagine how huge are the emissions of one passenger. But we are doing also the same, that we try to concentrate at the moment to our own actions, the new technology, and making the decisions what we can do ourselves. But we don't have this kind of compensation system coming, not yet, at least.
Well, you might want to wait until the law is here.
Yeah, so yes, of course, but
you might need some help from the politicians here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the politicians are on board. It just takes a while.
Yeah. It seems that the race for more environmentally friendly and sustainable ways of traveling is there, and it's going across the society, not just like in aviation or shipping or on rail travel. We've got a few more minutes to go, 9 minutes to be exact, and we've been getting a lot of comments. Thank you very much for those. Now we get, this is a very interesting philosophical question, if you like. Who is entitled to travel? We talked about London earlier, leisure work. Obviously travel cannot go to zero tomorrow, and that's for sure. Flight companies worldwide offer cheap travel and fun vacations and advertise low prices. They are encouraging people to fly for a quick holiday to make money. This should be banned. It may be only a small amount of people, but there is too much advertising to fly for quick holidays. A lot of these comments are revolving around flying, so so here we go with those. What we talk about, like it's not that long ago when flying to Paris for 1 night or 2 nights, or going even to an exhibition and coming back, was absolutely normal. The old normal. Now it seems to slowly and gradually becoming a big kind of like frown upon. What's your view on this kind of? You said earlier, Anne, that you encourage people to use more rail travel when it's needed and useful. But in terms of these kind of like quick holidays, what this talk is talking about, what's your view on those? I'm challenging you a bit here now.
Yeah. No, my personal view is that, I mean, personally, I wouldn't do it. I don't really see the point. I can't justify the emissions on a trip like that. But in terms of who should be able to fly and the price of the tickets, that is a really complex question. It's very easy to say that it's not okay to have 39 euros for flights to Spain. It sounds very frivolous, but then again, if you're a family of 5, one parent working, low income, maybe that is your trip of the year or 2 years or 5 years where you can take your whole family. So it's very difficult to say that, no, we shouldn't have that offering because it's too cheap and it's too frivolous then, because for somebody it's not. So it's also important to make sure that we don't go back into, remember we used to talk about jet setting? And that was because only very, very few people had so much money that they could take these jet planes and go to different places. But we don't want to have this jet set class. Travel should be somehow democratic still, because it is important that all people gain these experiences and gain this understanding of other cultures as well. So it's a philosophical question. It's very, very hard to reply. But in terms of flying to New York and taking a picture to my Instagram on a breakfast in a tower somewhere, I personally don't see a point in that. No.
Judging by these comments here and feedback, this is kind of reinforcing what we were talking about earlier about the aviation being the poster child to when we talk about climate change and people's emissions, individual or collective. Having said that, also like if you're flying to New York for one single photo or for 2 nights, yeah, that's not recommended. But also if you're ordering clothes online every single day, the emissions, to be factual, they are more, to be frank. So there are many things that we can think about outside this box when we talk about reducing emissions, and I'm sure everyone agrees that we need to reduce emissions and we need to find more innovative and sustainable ways of traveling and living our lives as consumers. Sorry. Here's another one. We've got a few more minutes. In my opinion, companies should not pass on the blame to the people, but instead be the ones to make the radical change. It doesn't start with all of us. Are we not the ones who have the wealth and the power? The huge businesses have it. What do you think of this? Anne has talked about Finnair's ways of, and Marika has talked about Finnair's ways of tackling the climate change and emissions through their company policy. But what would you say, Marika, to this person who obviously feel that he or she is being blamed on the emissions and companies are not carrying their responsibility in this issue?
Well, maybe I don't try. How does he or she feel that he is the one who is blamed? I don't know, but I definitely agree that the companies should do more, even more, and together to lower emissions and be more environmental friendly. But I don't know. Maybe I don't understand what he means here.
Well, if I may project here a bit, and you're special and you're expert in communication. In terms of like communication between the companies and customers, whether they be in Finland or Sweden or Asia, Southeast Asia, do you think there is a room for development in terms of the company kind of communication and bringing up statistics and research into that conversation and dialogue? What do you think, Marika? Any thoughts?
Well, yes, definitely. We need to also communicate more openly. Maybe there are also projects and initiatives which are not ready yet, and we don't. In Finland, we think that we are not allowed to tell anything. So we need to tell more open that what's coming and what's the big picture. But I think this COVID pandemic also has shown what is the big picture of travel industry like itself. So.
If I may sort of build on that and on the question as well on putting the blame on passengers, I hope that we're not giving that impression, but at the same time I think also the passenger needs to carry part of the responsibility. I completely accept that I need to accept the responsibility for my choices if I eat meat or if I fly or if I drive a car or whatever it is, but it needs to be in relation to my actions, so to say. So at Finnair, for example, once we get our offsetting scheme back online, then I would like, when you fly with us, Kim, or when you fly to Europe, I would want you to pay the €6 for the offset, and then we'll take care of the hundreds and the thousands and the millions of investments that we need to do in order to make your travel more sustainable. So both need to act, but then of course the investment needs to be and the dedication needs to be very, very, very different level.
Two-way road. Topi.
Yeah, I think of course the role of regulator is a big one in the climate change. Where I think we need to make polluting more expensive, and then the market economy works. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if this system would work. Although I think majority of the companies are obviously thinking ways now how to be more sustainable. That's the only way to survive in the future. But I wouldn't kind of rule out the role of politicians and regulators to make pollution more expensive and use market economy in a way to reduce those emissions, like via regulation.
We're running out of time, but this is so interesting. We could talk about this for all day. One more question from the audience. This is a really interesting one. How can National Rail, Finnair, Silja, others collaborate with small companies, producers, farmers by helping them with export, transport their products at lower cost while you have the capacity to do so? I'll pass the buck to Marika.
How can we
actually, this is I'm sure a lot of you already do this, because we're talking about how can big companies such as yours collaborate with small companies and producers, farmers, in terms of, I'm assuming he means or she means food production,
yes.
food that you are serving on your flights.
Yes, of course, we are already, I think you two doing it. We are supplying the food from local, of course, but they
Is there room for development collaboration?
Of course, all the times we can do much more, and yes, definitely, we should.
Yeah, nothing to add. Absolutely happy to. I mean, we serve, for example, cheese from a very small family-owned operator in Finland, but there's always room for more, and it is a collaboration. It is sort of this co-creation and joint innovation type of approach that is very much welcomed.
You can go to a train and ask where our ingredients are. They are all from Finland, obviously, the main ingredients. So we've been working on that a lot, and I think the next step is now to boost the small local travel businesses in Finland, hopefully during next summer especially.
That's interesting. It would be interesting to know what this conversation is going to be like in, say, next year or year after that.
Yeah.
World's changing so fast, and so do we have to do as well. Thank you very much for our excellent conversation, guys, and I wish you a great year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank to you all, guys. Very good comments. They are flying in. I'm really sorry I can't read all of them, but they're very good comments, and I hope you got a lot of good answers from our expert panelists on this really important matter, and the conversation continues.